This podcast is sponsored by Pearson, the team that brings you the Self, GFTA, and now the new PPVT5 and EVT3. Enjoy a special 10% pre-publication discount when you order these vocabulary tests before December 31st, 2018. Learn more at pearsonclinical.com/PPVT5.
Welcome to Talking with Tech. I'm your host, Rachel Madel, joined by Chris Bugay. Hi, Chris. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Rachel. I had another fabulous week of AAC coaching and implementation and working with speech therapists. And I got to do something really unique this week. I was able to go to New Hampshire for a presentation. I took a day and I was there with two other people in the field of AT, Mike Murata and Jennifer Edge Savage. They asked me to go up to New Hampshire and work with them with some of the teachers that they're working with. And we got to talk a little AAC while we were up there. The session wasn't all about AAC. It was about how to start and how to implement assistive technology, how to do a program. But there were a number of speech therapists in the room. And when I was talking about talking with tech, one of them was like, wait a second, I know your voice, that was cool. But at one point in the session, we had asked them to come up with things that they wanted to know more about and then things that they could share more about. And we gave them different categories in which to talk about. So one of them was like transition supports. Another one was literacy supports. And then one of them was AAC. What do you want to know more about AAC? And what do you know about AAC that you could share with others? And so just go to the wall and put your sticky note up and tell us. And there was just this slew of sticky notes under the AAC side, as you can imagine, because it's just, again, reinforcing that it's not just the neck of the woods that I live in or that you live in, that this is, again, something that we're struggling with worldwide is how to implement AAC. And so I thought I'd read some of the questions, Rachel. You want to hear what some of the people put on their sticky notes?
I'm very eager to hear, because that way we can help, right? That's what this whole podcast is about, is trying to answer some of those questions.
Well, okay, again, about this podcast here, someone specifically wrote, I would like to know more about success stories with those with complex cognitive and physical needs and the hows. How did they become success stories? Which I think we have tried, and of course, I think in the new year, we are going to continue to try is have users on the podcast to kind of share their stories. How were you successful?
And if you haven't listened to the Chris Klein episode, it's fantastic. He is a AAC user, and it's amazing to see him use his system. And I think that, exactly like you said, Chris, we're just trying to find more stories to share. So if you know of anyone, or you are someone who listens to the podcast who happens to be an AAC user, we would love to have you on to talk about your experience, talk about what worked, what didn't work. This is all really helpful information to practitioners, to parents, to see those success stories.
So this is a little tangent off the wall, but also something I got to do this week was I participated in AT Chat. So on Twitter, every Wednesday at 8 o'clock, there's an hour-long Twitter chat where everyone uses the hashtag AT Chat. And on that AT Chat, there was some people who were device users. They came in and said that we are users of device. Actually, it was Carol Zangari that was doing the moderation for this particular AT Chat. And so there were device users that were giving their input. And I was like, I might need to reach out to them as potential guests for the podcast. But that's another strategy. People could go to the Twitter chat and just check up and see what people were saying, because that's a great way to get authentic voices of people who are using AAC. Back to the wall for a second. So here was another sticky note, which is not something we have covered yet, Rachel, but I'd be curious what you think about this. It says, I'm interested in learning how to store and save large files so that SLPs can access them. So like backup the backup systems, many video modeling files, visual boards. Where can they house all of that stuff and keep all of that stuff? Any ideas?
I mean, my first inclination is Dropbox, because I use Dropbox for a lot of the backups, which, by the way, let's do a little public service announcement about the importance of backing up systems, because I have experienced all too often the system that fails or the iPad that breaks and we don't have a backup and we don't have a current backup. So it's just something that I constantly have to remind myself too. A lot of these systems now, they have automatic backup that you can, log into your Google Drive or your Dropbox account and they will automatically back up. But it's really important to just make sure that's toggled on and to just keep checking that periodically, because there's nothing worse than spending, hours and hours and hours, continuously programming and updating, vocabulary on a device only to find out that it's completely erased because of a technical malfunction.
What I was thinking when I read this was Google Drive, which I think is another place that people keep. And in many school districts, they have gone Google. They might have already be working in a Google environment. So a student might have their own Google account. So you could be teaching the student how to back up their system and put it on Google Drive if that's an option. Or if not, then the people working with the student could be keeping it in Google Drive. So those are the two big ones that came to mind. I could also see keeping things on a portable hard drive someplace as a backup, like a physical copy, not a cloud-based copy. But I lived through that pain. My daughter will forever never let me forget how we crashed our system and didn't have it backed up, and we lost all of her baby pictures from age from birth to 2. So I feel that pain.
I know. It's like technology can be wonderful until technology goes awry, and then it could be your worst nightmare.
So here's another one, and this was actually twice. There was 2 different people that put the same thing up on the board. It was, I'd like to learn more about feature matching, how to do AAC evaluations, and how to do the word was treatment. I was like, well, that's a pretty big scope there, but just feature matching. We ended up talking about it in the session, and I could see us talking about it too. This idea that in order to select a system, you look through the student's needs, and then after you have everything you need to think about, to consider about a student, then you go looking for the tool that might match all of those needs.
Right, exactly. So feature matching, just the idea that we're looking at the specific features of a system that would be really beneficial for a child. So I actually just got the question, what is feature matching? And so that's exactly what it is. And it's a process that we go through when we're trying to figure out what technology can work best for a child or an adult, making sure that we first we look at the features that would be great and beneficial, and then we go kind of seeking out the system that has those features.
Here's the example that I used, Rachel, there is that it's because we're right after Black Friday, right? And Black Friday, what do people do? They go on Amazon and they go look for the Black Friday deals on Amazon, right? And so, at least I did, I imagine a lot of people did that too. And so you're scrolling through what are the deals? And before I know it, I've done an hour of just pressing the next button, looking through all the random items that maybe might come up with, would my wife like that? Oh, would my son like this? Would my aunt like this thing? That's a terrible way to go shopping, is looking through all the inventory that might be beneficial to someone I know in my life. A much more efficient way is to go, okay, I know my son likes Legos and I know he likes Batman. Lego Batman? Well, now my selection is, you type that into the search, and if it happens to be a Black Friday deal, great. If not, okay, but at least I get something that I know he would enjoy and he would like, as opposed to just some random stuff.
Exactly. It's a better fit. And that's the point of feature matching, is just you want to make sure it's a really good fit with whatever technology you decide to use. So I love, love, love that. Such a great activity, Chris. I mean, thank you for getting some fresh topic ideas for our podcast.
So there was one more thing I got to do, Rachel. And so Mike Murata actually got a bunch of merge cubes. And I know you have some experience with the merge cubes. And I had seen them, but I never actually played with one. So he gave me one. And of course, I brought it right home when I played with my kids. And tweeted about it with my wife holding the merge cube. So you want to explain what a merge cube is?
Yes. So a merge cube is a new technology that uses augmented reality, but the merge cube itself is actually a foam cube that you can hold in your hand. So you use it in combination with augmented reality apps. So if you're holding the merge cube and you're using either tablet or iPhone, what you see through the screen is augmented reality. So it's part reality, meaning you can see your hand and you can see the room that you're in. But it's also, not complete reality, because when you're looking through the screen, something crazy pops out of the cube. Like a dragon is my favorite one. I love AR Dragon, which you can you don't use with the Merge Cube, but it's an augmented reality app that is really great. So that's kind of a short synopsis of what the Merge Cube is and how it's being used.
So someone asked when we were playing with the Merge Cube, I had it in my hand, and one of the things that Mike showed was that you could have this campfire come up, and this is the free app that kind of illustrates what it does, right? So you don't have to pay. The Merge Cube you have to pay for. By the way, we are not sponsored by Merge Cube. It was just a cool thing that happened this week. So we had this Merge Cube. You hold the free app over it, and a campfire now erupts in your hand, right? And so someone was like, "What's the educational use of that?" And so I was immediately like, well, oh my gosh, that's core vocabulary right there. Like how you could illustrate that this is hot and that it's there and that you want to put out, and you could try and stamp it out and then make the fire go away. And we just started brainstorming all these different ways to use. And that's just one particular app, this little campfire that can erupt in your hand, turn the cube into a campfire. There was this solar system and skulls and a heart and all sorts of fun activities. And I was just like, my mind was racing with how much more fun is this playing with the Merge Cube than, I don't know, doing a paper, like rip this piece of paper off Velcro and put it on this side of the folder, you know what I mean? Or take a peg and put it in this box, This is so much more engaging. At least it would be to me if I was a student in the class.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually consulted on an augmented reality app for kids with autism that helps teach social skills. And so there's a video that I made actually, which demonstrates this perfectly, because I feel like it's kind of hard to conceptualize what this cube does without actually seeing it. These new technologies, that are emerging are so hard to really visualize because they're so new, right? And innovative. But yeah, I mean, there's so many different ways to use technology. And I think that the novelty factor is huge because kids get so excited. And when you see that spark of excitement, that's a communication opportunity. So I think it's important to remember for all the haters out there that are like, well, what could we do with a fire in someone's hand? I mean, the potentials are endless. If kids get excited about it, that's step one. And, who wouldn't get excited about something, a ball of fire in their hand that's not actual fire? I mean, that sounds awesome.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, so something else we talked about was something called, what was more illustrative of what we were really trying to get at this whole presentation, was something called the SETT framework, which is was created by someone named Joy Zabala. And it is a way of looking at how to select the tools that you want to put in place for a student. And it's really coming to a shared perspective. And that ties into a little bit of our interview today. Rachel, you tell us about Curt Warner.
So Curt is a retired NFL player. And he actually has twins with autism. They're 24 years old now. And he just came out with a book. It launched December 1st. It's called The Warner Boys. And he wrote it with his wife, Ana. And it's such a great book. Honestly, I am just so excited that they could come on the podcast and talk about their experience. It's just a really raw account of, everything that they went through raising twins with autism. And I'm pumped. I'm so excited that they were able to come on and that, Chris, you were able to join us today.
Yeah, it's not often that we get to do the interviews together. And it's great that we got to be there and talk with them. And they were such a great couple, right? So much fun. And they had this engaging spirit with each other. It was great. Well, one of the things that they were talking about through this interview was different strategies that they have used over the years. And it kept coming back in my mind as we were listening to them and we were chatting with them, that how do you come up with the strategy that you want to put in place, And so we thought maybe we'd brainstorm some strategies we use with families when we're talking about what kind of tool we put in place. Also, this kept coming up in New Hampshire as well. People wanted to jump to the tools. It often is like, give us more tools. And I think families do that as well. Give us the solution to the problem. And I think one of the things we have to do, and again, getting back to this SETT framework, is analyze what the problem is in order to come up with the best tool. Because if we jump to the tools too soon, we might not match the right tool to the problem. So one way to talk about problems is to talk about the student. That's so the S in the SETT framework is give us as much detail and about information about the student as possible. Talk about the environment that the student is in. Let's get the details about what's happening with the student in their environment. And then the tasks that you're asking them to do in those environments. And when you analyze those three areas and get as much information about those three areas as you can then have a better informed decision about what tool to put in place.
And the way this looks in, real life practice is getting really specific with parents and saying, what is the biggest problem that you're facing right now? Oftentimes when I get a new referral, the first question I ask is, if I had a magic wand and I could fix anything, what would it be? And sometimes it's communication related and sometimes it's not, but it's really indicative to me of what a parent is really struggling with the most. And we talked with Curt and Ana today, and, they talked about a lot of what goes on in these families is behind closed doors. And Ana talks about how, she has a smiling face, and she did the entire time her boys were growing up, and nobody knew until this book came out, actually, that, she had a lot of struggles. And I think that the biggest indicator to how we can help families is just asking and just getting really specific about what that looks like. And sometimes it's not communication related, but that's okay. There's ways, communication's everywhere and pervasive, and we can figure out ways to incorporate our communication targets while simultaneously helping solve a problem. And I think that once you do that for a family, they trust you and they're willing to, trust your opinion, and they value your opinion because you validated and you helped fix a problem that they had. And that's so important in the initial stages of any type of therapeutic relationship. Just kind of feeling out the problem and figuring out, how can I solve this problem for this family?
Sometimes the problems are large in scope, like how do you help my child communicate better? That's a very large problem. But then others are maybe a little bit smaller in scope and a little bit more manageable, like how can you help me get through bath time? They tell a little story that made me think about it, where they said, one of their children went to the bathroom, and all of a sudden water was everywhere, right? And they're just getting through a day where they weren't spilling water everywhere when they're trying to brush their teeth or take a shower. Well, that's something, it's a very targeted thing. Well, okay, how can we make the bathroom experience better? How can we make the toothbrushing experience better for you? Well, okay, let's talk about it. What does your child do when they're going to brush their teeth? Why do they leave the water on? What could we do to help them as a reminder? Could a visual support help? And even there, like, I'm ready to jump to the tool. Let's put a visual support, but maybe we need to discuss it a little bit more about the task. Well, okay, what's the type of toothbrush that you're using? Is anyone else brushing the teeth at that time? What is the lighting like? What time of day are you doing that? What happens just before it? And what happens just after it? Like, really analyzing that situation can get us to much better tool strategy of what the visual might be or what the tool might be to help them fix that problem.
I have a very practical idea that I use for bath time routines, actually. So there's an app called Peppy Bath. Have you heard of this, Chris?
No.
Okay, so it's a really fun app. I think it's a few dollars, and kids love it. It's this app where you choose a character, and this character is really dirty. He has a dirty face and messy hair, and so he's in front of a sink, and you have to wash his hands, and he has snot dripping out of his nose, and it's really, he's gross, but he needs to clean himself up. He needs to brush his teeth. And so a really great strategy to use if you're able to be in the home, or you could even, potentially do this in a classroom as far as washing hands and, blowing noses and things like that. You give the command. So you're like, okay, we're going to turn the water on. And after they turn the water on, then they can do it on the app. So it's it's a way to kind of take them through the process. So I do it, I'll do a prep activity where we just play with the game. And then, to transfer that gameplay to real life, I bring the app along with us to the bathroom. And I'm like, okay, let's turn the water on just like we did for Peppy Bath. And it's just a really interactive way to use technology. It doesn't always have to just be sitting, at a table with a device. The nice thing about iPads, they're portable. You can take them wherever you need to go. And it's just a really great reinforcing activity for kids who are learning those types of routines.
And the reason you know to put that app in place and to do that activity and put that in place is because you spent that time to recognize that's the problem that needs to be addressed, that will make the life a little bit better for everyone in the environment. The child's life will be better, the parent's life will be better. And then if you could do that again with, okay, what's the next biggest issue? Okay, maybe it's dinner time, or maybe it's going out to dinner, or maybe it's just getting in the car. Okay, let's analyze that situation and let's come up with a tool or strategy or intervention to target that. And before you know it, now if you keep adding up those little problems and coming up with little solutions for them, you can then have an intervention strategy that works across the day.
Yeah, and I love that you bring out specific routines, because I think oftentimes we're really general. We want them to use these kinds of words across, you always see in the IEP, across all settings and all routines, this kind of blanket statement, which is important for an IEP because it's long-term, it's a year, and we don't want to be limited necessarily. But I think that when we're thinking about short-term implementation strategies, we really need to get specific about what routines what we're targeting. And I think starting with the ones that are pretty challenging, or causing, like you said, Chris, the most problems, is a really effective strategy. The other thing it's really good for is it's not overwhelming. So if you tell a parent, okay, we're going to work on the word go every time that we get up from dinner, for example, you give very specific ideas as to how they can start implementing these strategies, and they're more likely to do it versus just a general recommendation of like, oh, use the word go this week. And then kind of like, you figure it out. That's never a good strategy. People like to know exactly what to do, and they're more apt to do it if you give them the nitty-gritty details.
Yeah, I think breaking it down with a task analysis like that is the way to go, And I find that strategy is not just for parents. I find that with teachers as well. I've made that mistake where I've gone in and said, okay, we are going to implement core vocabulary all day long. All right, how are we going to do that? Let's break it down. And sometimes that can feel very overwhelming for a staff member or for a teacher. So say, okay, let's see if we can implement it in these 2 parts of your day. And next week, let's see if we can implement it in these 4 parts of your day. And then let's, from these 4 parts of your day, these 8 parts of your day, and crescendo out, if you will, pardon the pun, but crescendo out in that way to make it the entire day eventually. But trying to start with do it all at once is just too overwhelming for just about anybody.
Absolutely. So before we head into the interview, Chris, I have a surprise.
A surprise?
Yes.
I love surprise.
I know. We have 95 reviews on iTunes.
Oh my goodness, we're so close.
I know. So you guys know, because you're dedicated listeners to our podcast, that we've been trying to get to 100 reviews on iTunes before the end of the year, and we're 5 away. I'm so excited.
I think we can do it, Rachel. With only 5 people, you could be the one listener right now. You could be the 100th person. You could be the one that puts us over the edge.
Yeah, it's exciting. I want to read one that I just really loved. Thank you for pulling it all together. This is from Beth SLP. I've abandoned top 40 radio to listen to podcasts. Your touch on so many facets of AAC helps me to apply my critical thinking to each episode. You give me confirmation that I know what I'm doing, resources to hunt down, or topics to analyze, whether I agree or not. I have a rotten schedule, but I'm able to use my time in the car to my advantage. Your presentation style is relaxed and kind. Thanks.
I love that we can help with her rotten schedule.
I know. I love that adjective, rotten.
Do we have any more?
Yes, we do. Linda B. SLP says, I was introduced to your podcast by a colleague about a month ago, and now I can't stop listening. I have a 30-minute drive to work and sometimes just can't stop listening when I arrive. I've been an SLP for 27 years, but will never stop learning. AAC and AT have always been a special interest of mine. I've been blessed the past 2 years to work with 4 students with complex communication needs. Your podcast is helping me advance my teaching and coaching with the 9 paraprofessionals that I work with, and to gently overcome the overuse of a prompting method that has been pervasively used with these students. Any continued advice on the coaching method, specifically when faced with an existing program embedded in RPM, would be very appreciated. Keep talking. Okay, so I think that she's giving us an idea for a future podcast episode.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting you read that one, because that sort of ties back to the interview. I think the Warners mentioned how they had different doctors and different advice that it wasn't always great. At the time, they didn't know any better. But now, looking back on it and reflecting, they were like, they had to undo some things that that maybe they wouldn't have if they had the proper advice. And it sounds like that's what that reviewer is also saying, is that they have to work now extra hard to change something that was put in place. And so that's what one of the whole purposes of this podcast is, to put out good research-based information, evidence-based practices that so people don't make those mistakes. They can be more informed.
So if you guys haven't left us a review, we would greatly appreciate it. We have 5 left with only small window of time before the end of the year. If you haven't joined our Facebook group, there's amazing discussions going on within the Facebook group. Just search Talking with Tech and it will pop up. We just had a giveaway go off in there, which was really exciting from Jenna Rayburn from Speech Root News. There's just all the things are going on in the Facebook group. So don't miss out. Please join us if you're on Facebook.
So before we head into the interview, Rachel, I just wanted to say one other thing. You read the book, The Warner Boys, right?
Absolutely. And it is awesome. I thought it was a really, really well done book. The story that they told, I think, is a story that needs to be told more often. And I would highly recommend you guys picking the book up and reading it. Seems like a perfect holiday gift. So we will link to that in the show notes so that you guys can have access to the Amazon link. And yeah, I know that the Warners would appreciate it. They've been getting a lot of really exciting feedback from the book, it sounds like. So
it's definitely going on my Christmas shopping list.
Absolutely.
I know my wife would love it, I'm sure. I mean, the way they were talking about it, they definitely sold me on it.
Perfect. Well, without further ado, let's head into the interview with Curt and Ana Warner. Well, welcome to Talking with Tech. I'm your host, Rachel Madel, joined with my co-host, Chris Bouguet, and I'm so excited for our interview today. We're here with Curt and Ana Warner. Curt is a former running back from the Seattle Seahawks and Los Angeles Rams, 2-time All-American out of Penn State, a 3-time Pro Bowler. His wife, Ana, is mom to 4 amazing children, including twin boys with autism. She has dedicated her life to caring for her family and studying the treatment of autism. Both Curt and Ana have delivered keynotes at the National Autism Conference, and they just released their first book, The Warner Boys, which documents their experience raising twins with autism. Curt and Ana, I'm so excited to have you guys here today.
Thank you. We're excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to be here as well.
So just tell us a little bit about you guys, your family. I'm so excited to talk about this book. It really touched my heart in a lot of ways. So thank you guys for being here. And let's just start by giving us a little intro.
I'll let you start, honey.
I am from Brazil. I moved to the United States in 1989. Met my prince,
your husband.
My husband in late 1989. We got married 1990.
Yeah.
And we have 4 wonderful children.
I am from West Virginia. My father was a coal miner and went to a school in Pennsylvania, Penn State, on to the NFL, finished with the NFL, or they finished me in 1990, and I met my wife, and we have been married for
almost 29 years.
Almost 29 years. Yeah. So, and we have 4 wonderful children.
That is amazing. And I have to tell you, Curt, so I'm from Pennsylvania. I have a lot of family who are Penn Staters. And so when I told them who was coming on my podcast, they were so jealous. So big fans over here.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, of course. So let's kind of dive right in. You guys just had a book release, The Warner Boys, which documents your experience. And I guess my first question is, what was the impetus for writing a book?
Oh, that's a good question. It wasn't one of those things where we said, okay, we're going to write a book. I think it happened over a period of time, probably 10 or 15 years. And I kept saying to myself, as we were going through all of these issues, behavior issues with Austin and Christian, you can't make this up. And it's sort of a nonfiction fiction sort of life that we're living. And we were just dealing with a number of challenges. And at that time, we just didn't have time to sit down and to write down anything other than the fact we were just hanging on for dear life.
Yeah.
and trying to understand what we were going through with the diagnosis and with the educational process and all the other stuff. But one thing kind of led to another, and it was after the Penn State conference a few years ago that we had created an outline, and I was thinking to myself, I think we may have an outline for a book. And that was kind of how it sort of started from there. And then we met Dave and a few other people, and kind of, and now we're in the process of being authors and had a book release a couple of weeks ago.
Well, I think it was we knew we had a story to tell, but we were hoping that it could help other families and or educate the public a little bit more about severe autism. You hear a lot about the high functioning, the Asperger's, and the kids going to college and being successful and opening companies and all of that stuff. Well, there's the other side of the spectrum as well that is not talked about it because is uncomfortable to read or to see kids like that out in public or be talking about it. So I thought, you know what, this is there'll be a good opportunity to teach a little bit, educate the public, and hopefully have more compassion.
Yeah, it's been a challenge on a number of fronts. With regards to the diagnosis, and then just the behaviors, and then family and friends, and all of the things that we've had to kind of deal with over a period of time, and not really talk about it. I mean, because there was no one to talk to about it, because try to explain that to someone as to why your children are behaving a certain way, or your friends come over to your house and you got holes in your drywall all throughout the house and it looks like a war zone, and your kids are out of control, and you don't really, you can't put your finger on it. And the only thing you can do is just kind of take it day by day. And that's kind of what we do.
Let me ask, how old are the boys right now?
They're 24.
24 years. So we're talking about in the late 90s, mid 90s, when you're starting to experience these sorts of behaviors, and you're having. What were the early years like when you were realizing that your children had autism?
Well, first we had Jonathan, our first son, or our second son. Our first son was a stillborn, but Jonathan was a very calm, happy baby. And then when we had the twins, they were fine in the beginning, and then by 18 months old, 2 years, things start changing. Hyperactivity. I mean, these kids were climbing on everything and eating non-food items, and they had their own language. And we kept asking the doctor, is this normal? What's going on? And the fact that the boys were bilingual at the time, and I was trying to teach them Portuguese, and I was advised by a doctor to stop doing that because that was delaying their, that was probably one of the things that was delaying their language. And then there was, twins. They have their own language.
There was a number of things. It was just
boys are usually late, and I'm like, okay, when they're 15, they're going to start talking. So it just went that way for a long time. But we started to get really closed in on not being able to go out because they would just run opposite directions, and that was crazy. So when we moved from Seattle to the Portland, Oregon area, but we're still in the state of Washington, and we went to a developmental pediatrician a month after we moved here. And 5 minutes in the room with Austin, who's a little bit more high functioning. 5 minutes in the room, she said, it's autism. And I thought, it's going to be ADHD, and she's going to give us a pill, and it's going to get all better. Mm-hmm. And I was like, no. And I thought it was my fault. I thought it was bad parenting because something I was doing was making them hyper and
crazy. But it wasn't,
But it was. The doctor even the doctor said, it's not your fault. This is not you doing it. So, and we left that meeting with a diagnosis of autism. And the only reference we had was Raymond. And that I was like, no, my kids are not like that in the movie. And I got home and typed on the computer, autism, and started the research right there.
Actually, that was one part of the book that I loved. You said the internet became my classroom, my library, my community. Can you just speak a little bit to your experience using, the internet and research online and online communities? Because I think that's a lot. There's a lot of support networks now with social media so pervasive. I think there's a lot of community that you can find, because it sounds like when you were going through all of this, it was very isolating in a lot of ways.
Very. Back then, you talking 1999, the rate of autism was low. So I typed autism, and I would print everything that I could so I could read later and have like binders. I guess maybe that's why Austin has all this binders. And it was like my research and diet and ABA and speech. We took
speech
them.
Therapy.
Speech therapy was like twice a week, and ABA and
sensory issues.
And sensory. Yes.
We went through the whole gamut.
Yes.
It was 40 hours a week.
40 hours of ABA a week per child, plus speech therapist, plus.
It's busy.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a lot of the kids that we work with. I mean, their schedules. Yeah. I can't even understand how there's not enough time in the day to do all these therapies. It sounds like that was your experience too.
Pretty much. And online, I mean, there are a lot of communities that you started to get involved. But later on, as the boys grew older, I ended up focusing more on dietary needs, medical interventions, and going that route, and changing diet, and the whole cooking forever, and
gluten-free,
gluten-free, dairy-free, food preservatives-free, and food coloring-free, soy-free, and the list goes on.
It's a big list.
Yeah.
That was actually so impressive. I was reading, and first of all, I work with a lot of children with autism, and I've seen significant improvements with dietary changes. There's so many different things out there, and there's no one size fits all, right? Yeah. But I do think that kind of exploring those options can really help with, attention and, some of the digestive issues that a lot of kids with autism have. So I was really happy to see that. But I also know what a time commitment that is. I mean, it sounds like you dedicated so much of your time in life to just kind of buying fresh food and preparing fresh food and these things.
Job. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And she does a great job at it, because if it was left up to me, we would be in a lot of trouble.
Ordering pizza, trying to find some gluten-free pizza, gluten-free, dairy-free pizza.
A lot of things.
I think that diet would have been gone long.
Yeah. You also, guys, you talked about a lot of your own personal health struggles and kind of the toll that it takes over time. And one of the parts also, Ana, that I loved in the book, when you hear those announcements on the airplane, if the oxygen mask comes down, put yours on first before you help your children. You said, you know what? No mother will do that. They'll put the child's mask on first every time. And I just thought that was so powerful and so true, right? We know the rationally speaking, like, yes, we need to put, our own mask on first. But I feel like when it comes to actually implementing that, it's so hard.
It is. When you end up, like the boys and I take this vitamin that has helped me with my chronic fatigue. So when we are kind of running low, I would rather give it to them and than to take it myself, and I'll wait for the next shipment that comes. So that's what we do. And that's, they will get the best part of the meal than we do. So it's just part of parenting, I guess.
And I think that a lot of moms out there who are listening can completely relate to that. And I just thought it was so eloquently written.
So can I jump in and ask a question about their communication? What are the boys' primary mode of communication? Are they using verbal speech? Some of the people that listen to this podcast, they use communication devices.
They are verbal. Austin is more verbal than Christian. He talks nonstop.
And he may interrupt you
about his subject, and he will try to tell you that he, needs to be doing a recording upstairs on the DVD or whatever. Christian has apraxia as well, and so it's more difficult for him to express himself.
And so you have experience with speech therapy, I would imagine.
Yes. We did in the beginning, and then it was just like, okay, it was just too much.
Mm-hmm.
And Christian would probably benefit from speech now.
Yeah.
It's hard when you get to this age. Is the services kind of stop when you're 21.
Mm-hmm.
So it is really trying to figure out, okay, what can we do here, or how, you end up trying to maintain maintain a household that is kind of calm, and here he is, Mr.
Speaking of Austin.
Honey, we're on an interview here. Want to say hi?
Hi. Oh, this is perfect. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Austin.
Rachel.
And this is Chris.
Rachel, Chris.
Yes.
Where's the DVDs?
Let's get to business.
Okay, we'll do that later, okay? After lunch. I promise. Okay.
VHS.
Okay.
Can you turn it down? Because you got it way too loud.
Okay.
In there, please.
Thank you.
Service.
Turn it down, please.
Service.
Turn it down. Maybe that's open. And he's got what's he got on loud? The television?
A day in the life.
I mean,
Oh boy.
he sounds like kids that just have their music up too loud.
Exactly.
Yeah.
My mom would yell at me for the same thing.
So let's go back a little bit. I want to talk about those years where the words weren't coming, because it sounds like it took a long time for communication to happen. And I work with a lot of families, and a lot of them were implementing technology, because words aren't coming, so we can use other alternative means to kind of help with that. I'm sure that wasn't as pervasive back when you guys were going through all of this. So just talk about the experience of having kids who aren't able to communicate what they need and what they want.
And the boys, by the age of 5, Austin had about 5 words, some in Portuguese, some in English. Christian had less than that. So a lot of behavior is communication. So a lot of screaming and hitting and crying, and a lot of frustration.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we didn't have iPads or anything like that they could use to communicate. So the walls and
they
the
would take it on pretty much everything else.
Yes, became part of the communication. And it's still hard to, not now, Austin, it's still hard to do so.
Come on, Luxie.
Okay, honey. Because like for Christian hit his head on the floor or on the walls for 3 years. And we couldn't I remember going to a pediatrician, and the pediatrician was like, oh, it's just his autism. And I was like, last week, he didn't bang his head. He still had autism.
Right.
So something is happening. This is not autism, and
something changed.
Yeah. And we don't have that pediatrician anymore. But he couldn't tell us that his stomach was hurting.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just trying different things that were not helping him. And it's just, there was a way for him just, okay, I'll hit my head, and that numbs everything. And that pain I'll concentrate on this pain and forget about my stomach.
Mm-hmm.
That was his communication. And not being able to tell you what hurts. It's hard. as a parent to see your kid like that and not being able to communicate.
And it's just a guessing game in a lot of ways, you know?
Yes.
Did anyone suggest picture symbols or some sort of alternative communication system other than just verbal?
PACS. We use PACS they use PACS in school, but it was still no way to communicate that, okay, my stomach really hurts and I need something to stop it. There was nothing. Mm-hmm. So for a long time, we tried, because of his headbutting, head banging, we had to stop. We were going to private school with an aide, and we had to stop because of the behavior, because of the headbanging. It was just too much. Mm-hmm. And he was in pain, poor thing. He was in pain.
I know that has to be so hard as a parent to watch and to not be able to help in a lot of ways. You probably felt so helpless.
Yes, it was us in tears all the time, just holding him, trying to figure out what to do, and changing doctors to see if we could help. Not getting much of anything.
Once you got the digestive things under control, did you notice a huge decrease in the self-injurious behaviors?
Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. And he still has digestive issues. He still has malabsorption, and that's something that we're still dealing with it.
Mm-hmm. Ana, there's a portion of the book that's really raw and vulnerable where you talk about the depression that set in for you. And I'm just curious, what shifted? Because I could sense, from reading that something shifted in you. And I just would love for you to talk about, that shift in perspective, because, I know a lot of parents out there, a lot of our listeners, they're going through those initial stages of diagnosis. They're not sure if their child's ever going to communicate. They're having all these behaviors, so of course there's lots of things that go along with that. So can you just speak about that a little bit?
I think I've dealt with depression. After having the twins, I had postpartum depression. And so I've dealt with depression most of my adult life. Mm-hmm. But during those times when the boys were doing therapy, and we're still, not sleeping well, just busy with therapy or with, speech and this and that, and exhausted. And it was nonstop. And the only times that the boys will kind of calm down was when we'll get in the car and I'll just drive around. I'll just drive and drive and drive. Most of the times in tears. And I thought, Jonathan and Curt would be better off if we're not here. And I never told Curt that until we wrote the book. And of course, getting my medication and making sure that I was taking care of myself mm-hmm. as well. And I think after the fire, my perspective of life changed because we lost 95% of our stuff. Mm-hmm. And it was just like, wow, but I have what is important, my husband and my kids. So we'll go from there. So I still deal with depression. It's something that I'm very blessed to have a husband that understands me and that is always there for me when I need. All I have to say, I'm not having a good day. I'm having a hard time. And if I need to go to bed early, I'll do that. He'll stay with the kids. So I'm very blessed that he's there for me.
Absolutely. Yeah, there was another quote that I loved from the book. When one of us was down, the other had to pick up the slack. If not, we'd both just be waiting in self-pity. You can live in that self-pity, or you can just face the fact that there's no way out except to keep fighting, which I think can just transcend, any struggle, right? There's always a period where you kind of are like, oh man, this is hard and my life is hard and all these things. But at the end of the day, that doesn't really change the situation that you're in. So really changing your perspective and just deciding to keep on fighting. And it sounds like you guys have a beautiful marriage and a beautiful relationship so that you're able to support one another.
It's a lot of prayer, a
Yeah,
lot of prayer. We pray every day together. And
Here comes the other one, Christian.
Christian, can you come and say hi?
Hi.
Come here, over here. Look.
Money.
Hi, Christian.
Hi, Christian.
Say hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Money.
That's Rachel, and this is Crete.
Madam.
Yeah. Okay. Here.
VHS.
Yeah, I know we're not gonna get that.
Back to
Oh my gosh, VHS.
Yeah.
Throwback.
VHS. So go finish your
VHS.
breakfast. No,
VHS.
that's not ours. Not ours. Okay.
VHS.
Can you put it down?
Back to VHS.
No, we need to do this. Okay.
Back
Bye.
to VHS. Back to
Bye.
Louis, back to VHS.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Now you.
No, this is perfect. I'm so happy I got to meet them. I feel like I'm just like so excited because I got to meet you guys and then I got to meet them. And I'm really.
I know.
Well, we'll work them in here at some point, or they'll work themselves into the.
Exactly. They won't be left out of the party. Speaking of fun, I feel like there were a lot of moments of kind of comedic relief in the book, which were really funny. Can you guys share some fun stories?
Oh, there's always something funny with the boys.
Pick a day.
One of the things the boys like to watch Disney videos in different languages on YouTube. Okay.
Yeah.
And, Austin sometimes will use an appropriate sentence, a sentence from a movie in an appropriate setting. So one day our daughter Isabella, she was little and she was having, one of those
Meltdowns.
tantrums and crying. Austin was in the kitchen with me. He looked at her and looked at me and said, "Qu'est-ce que c'est passé?" Like, what's happening in French?
Like you spoke French.
Yeah, I know. He just looked at her and looked, "Qu'est-ce que c'est passé?" And I was like, oh my gosh.
Oh, that's too funny.
Always something. There's always something funny, and they are characters.
Yeah, I love the headphones story. Can you share that one?
The one that he ate.
Yeah.
I bought this little headphones. It just came out and it was to block the noise, the little earbuds just to block the noise. I bought it for Christian and I thought that would be perfect for him because he's always covering his ears. That would be perfect. I go looking for the thing that only the case was out. I said, "Austin, have you seen Christian's earbuds, his headphones?" I ate them. What? I paid like $25 for the thing, and he ate it. So,
that made me laugh out loud, actually. That was great.
There's always something going on. Always, yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Can I jump in and ask just a quick question here? Tell us about your two other children. You have two.
Yes, we have Jonathan and Isabella. Jonathan works for iHeartRadio.
Sports talk show.
Yeah.
Sports
He's a executive producer for
620 iHeartRadio, which is a morning sports talk show
over here in Portland. Yeah,
in Portland.
And he had a hard time growing up, of course, especially after the fire, because his whole world was destroyed, and he was a teenager, and he hated his brothers for that. So when we wrote the book, we wanted him to be part of it. Yeah. So he has a chapter. Mm-hmm. And because a lot of times the siblings don't have a voice. They are neglected. We had to apologize to him later on. And after reading his chapter, we had to ask him to forgive us for, putting him kind of on the side, and because we're dealing with so much. But he now, he's found peace about the whole process, loves his brothers and loves to help. And Isabella is a little firecracker. She is a little sunshine, always happy, always smiling. Oh, not now that we're getting the teenage years and we have some more issues, but
right.
She is the best sister.
Yeah.
Loves them the way they are and just takes care of them. So she's really good.
the life lesson out of this thing is for parents is don't forget the other siblings.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you find a way to work them into what you're doing that week, whether you go out, you have a Friday night or a Monday night or a Saturday night,
yeah.
some type of date night where you can get out.
And we did that. We did divide it to,
but not
as we
much.
should. Yeah, Curt was doing all the sport things with Jonathan, taking him, helping coach baseball and doing all that stuff with him. And I had, we would sit down at night and watch the Cosby Show, just Jonathan and I lay down in bed in my room and watch the Cosby Show. That was our time together.
But the thing that you have to keep in mind from a family perspective is that things are going to change, and the things that you would normally do as a family, you may not be able to do them as often.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always going to be some type of issue. And whatever, if we go out to dinner, we're just kind of, maybe on edge.
The stress of going out to eat is,
but you try to keep it as normal as you can, but sometimes you just
sometimes you have to let it go of that. You wanted to have your normal life, whatever that is. Because you start comparing your life with your neighbors, your friends. Try not to do that because that will definitely lead you into depression and
there's no secret recipe.
No, I think you have to just let go of what you thought your life was going to be and started kind of just writing a new chapter, and which sometimes is hard, but you got to let go of what you thought your life was gonna.
And we still struggle with that daily.
Yeah.
So it's not like, okay, here's the remedy to the secret of life. No, it starts over.
Well, it's hard because you're online and you see somebody going to this wonderful vacation that taking the whole family and enjoy. You can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
So it is just hard.
We could do it, but it would be it would be a challenge.
Yes. Right. Would it be worth it?
It would be worth it.
It would be a very tough challenge to do that. So.
It wouldn't be a vacation.
No, not for us.
From
Because it would. So it's hard not to compare. And when you see things like that, or you see, your friends celebrating, their son or daughter graduating from college the same time that your child was supposed to be graduating from college, or when he's 16, they should be driving. And so all those things that you have to mourn over, okay, I'm not going to have that. I'm not going to have that. And it's hard.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you must find successes in other ways.
Absolutely.
The little things.
Yeah, we count our blessings. The little things that for other families, they wouldn't even pay attention. Will be, oh, look, he put his shoes on the right foot, and that's awesome. Or, he used the knife appropriately. So those little things that we
they go go get dressed, go upstairs and get dressed, go get a shower and get dressed without having the water all over the place.
Yeah.
And then the clothes all over the place.
Yeah.
And you just go like, come on, help me out here, partner.
They may have followed a direction that you maybe weren't sure they were going to follow, and then you kind of look at each other and cheer like he just
Yeah. So those little things that we celebrate.
Curt, you talked about the lesson for parents. Do you guys have a lesson for professionals? We have a lot of speech therapists who listen to this podcast, and you have had a lot of experience with doctors, therapists. What do you think the lesson for professionals working with families, who have children with autism? What do you think the lesson is that you can impart?
Well, I think will be somebody reads this book to understand that what goes on behind the doors, behind closed doors. For you guys, might be 45 minutes or an hour with the kid.
That's what
Those parents are exhausted, and they're doing this nonstop. There's no weekend off. There's no vacation. There's nothing. And those parents are struggling. Because after the book came out, I had a teacher she was Jonathan's kindergarten teacher, Austin's kindergarten teacher, and Isabella's kindergarten teacher. And she wrote me a note saying that she never knew what was going on because I was always smiling. I was helping in class, and I was always smiling because I could hide my pain really well. Mm-hmm. So just know that the parents might be smiling, might be, but what can I do to help? How's everything at home? What can we do for the child to communicate better at home? Or even if it's not, the parents are not doing the homework or whatever, understand that they might be at home trying to survive, trying to keep their heads above water. So be gentle,
understanding, sympathetic.
Give them some grace and understand that there's a lot of hurt going on.
Yeah, exactly.
No, absolutely. And I think that's a great reminder. And something I try to remind myself of often when I'm, working with a family or I'm going into an IEP meeting to talk about, progress and things like that. It's just, we don't know what goes on. And like you said, it's just 45 minutes or an hour and, we move on to a different child. So it's really important to have that empathy and understanding of, what might be going on that we don't even realize,
True.
Is there anything else that you guys, would like to share about the book or, anything else any gems of wisdom you'd like to impart?
I can't think of any right now, to be honest with you.
Yeah, just for people to be less judgmental when you see a child having a meltdown or, because most of the times these kids don't look like they have a disability. So a lot of times people give the parents the mean look, the judgmental look, said, what kind of a parent are you? So try to be less judgmental and be more compassionate and more helpful. You might have a neighbor that is struggling to, keep going. Mm-hmm. And offer help. Can I come in and help you out? Or, can I take your neurotypical kids and go and play with my kids so that can give you a break? So just be helpful.
Yeah.
Give some grace.
And
it's good advice for everybody.
Yeah. And I think too, just acceptance. I think, and that's probably a lesson that you've learned and, your children have learned, firsthand is just the idea that we need to be accepting of, individuals that are a little different than us, which I think is the silver lining in stories like yours is that, it's just an important reminder for everybody to just have more tolerance and acceptance and empathy.
Yes, exactly. Definitely.
Exactly.
Well, I have to tell you guys, I love the book. To all our listeners out there, you have to go read it. It's called The Warner Boys. It was just released December 1st. We will have the link in our show notes so that you can click on it and get reading it. It was really powerful for me, you guys. And it was a story of resiliency. And I think that even, I think it's great for parents, but I also think it's a must read for practitioners and professionals because it just gives insight into what does happen behind closed doors. And, how families can struggle with a diagnosis and, children with autism. So I would highly recommend everyone read it. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I'm so excited to share your story.
Thank you for writing the book.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. And thank you for reading it.
Yeah. Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So for Talking with Tech, I'm Rachel Madel, joined by Chris Bugay and Curt and Ana Warner. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we will talk to you next week.
You're listening to the Exceptional Podcast Network.